Hi everybody, Trishna here. If you guys have been wondering or confused about whether or not you are an empath, then I hope that by the end of this video you will have that figured out, because today we're going to go into the different personality traits that empaths share. And I know that this is probably not the first video that you're watching on this topic, and you have probably perused a lot of articles on this topic, but you're still here because you have questions about whether or not you fit under the empath umbrella. And I think part of that is because a lot of the qualities that are listed out there, they are accurate, I would say, but they are almost like too specific or maybe too vague. They're kind of, they don't really hit at the core of what an empath really is, like who you really are. They're more like surface qualities. So they cover things like you don't like to interact, you don't like to go out in malls or be around crowds because you take on the energy of other people and you can pick up on when somebody is lying to you. And again, those are all correct, but they don't really go into what an empath is. An empath is somebody who is very heart-centered, and that really comes out in how we deal with our relationships and interact with the world. So yeah, like a lot of those qualities are correct, and if you are a very self-aware empath, you might look at that list and be like, yeah, that's totally me. But if you're newer to this term, or not as self-aware, you're experiencing all of these traits, but you haven't entirely put two and two together yet. And so when you read the list, you're kind of like, yeah, like I kind of fit that, I think. Or you may look at the list and be like, I fit some of these, but not all of these. Do I have enough qualities to qualify as an empath? Or do I not have enough qualities? So there's a lot of questions there. And then on top of that, I feel like the whole empath term, for some, can be their first entry into, or like the gateway into, the whole spiritual new age bubble and concept. And so once you start catching on that you're an empath, you kind of get bombarded with a lot of different terms. Like you hear about light workers and way showers and star seeds and indigo children, crystal children, diamond children, rainbow children, warriors of light, and really the list goes on, and that can be very confusing and very overwhelming. So I hope that with this video I can clear up some of those things. So let's start with the different terminology that's out there. So when it comes to like the star seeds and the indigo children, crystal children, diamond, rainbow children, all those different terms that I listed, if you identify with any one of those, then you are probably an empath. Like you're almost certainly an empath, because to be any one of those, empath is almost like the entry requirement, the basic requirement. Now, if you read those and you don't really align with it, or you're really not into that whole world yet, because as an empath you probably will be drawn into it, but if you're really not into that world and you're just like, I feel like I align with some of these qualities, but the rest of that stuff, I don't know, that's just, I'm not so sure about that stuff, then you can still be an empath. You don't have to identify with those to be an empath. So if you're in that camp, just as we go through these traits that I'm going to go through, which are going to be the ones that really hit at the core of who an empath is, their wiring, because we are wired differently than the rest of the population, and just how we interact with other people and live that heart-centered lifestyle. As we go through these, don't think about these other terms, just evaluate yourself based off of these qualities and only think about the empath label, and just keep it very simple. And after we go through these qualities, I'm also going to go into what I think the empath's role is in society, because again, we are wired differently. We are heart-centered, and we interact with people and situations in a very, very different way than the majority of people around us and the majority of people have throughout our history. And so I really believe that the empath is the future leader of our society, but we'll go into more of that at the very end. So because empaths interact differently with the people in their lives, I really think that it's important that as we go through this list, that you really think about the close relationships that you have in your life. When I say close relationships, I mean the people that you really love and care about and just really want in your life, even if that's not necessarily reciprocated to the same level in return. So I really want you guys to think about, it could be colleagues, but more than likely it's going to be friends, family, and especially romantic partners. So those are the people I want you guys to think about as we go through each of these examples. Or not examples, qualities. So basically what we're going to do now is I'm going to go through a list of about 19 or so different qualities that empaths tend to share. And I want you guys to think about your relationships And I want you to think about the people in those relationships and also the situations in those relationships. And when it comes to situations, I really want you guys to focus on the conflicts that you have in relationships, because how an empath handles conflicts is very different from how other people handle conflicts. And that is really going to be the key to helping you determine if you are empathic, or if maybe you're a sleeping empath, because you might be a sleeping empath, or if you're just not an empath at all. So I'm going to go ahead and cover the 19 different qualities that empaths share, and I'm going to refer to notes because it is a lot to cover. So basically, the first quality is, if you are an empath, you are an agreeable person. Now, if you need to confront somebody that you care about, you will make that happen. But for the most part, you really just choose your battles. And that kind of leads into number 2, which is you take people as they are. And so you allow people to have their own opinions, their own thoughts, their own feelings about things, and you really just don't make a big deal out of most things. And that leads into number 3, which is people tend to feel a lot more loved, appreciated, and accepted by you than they do by most other people. And you've probably had several of these people that you really care about tell you that you are always there for them. So I want you guys to think about your relationships, and I don't just want you to think about one relationship. I want you guys to think about a few different relationships with people that you really care about, because you need to establish a pattern. And if you just focus on one, sometimes people can kind of trigger us, trigger anybody, just like we can trigger others. So you want to kind of take a look at a few different people and establish that pattern. And I want you guys to ask yourself some questions. So, do you guys feel the need to shift somebody else's opinion or their interests to be the same as yours? Do you need somebody to like the same things that you like and think the same way that you think? Or do you kind of allow them to be who they are? Do you always need to make your opinion known at every chance that you get with these people that you really care about? Or do you share your opinion only when you feel compelled and let it be the rest of the time? Like when you really feel a strong calling, that's when you share it, and for the rest of the time you just kind of let people have their own opinion and you have yours and you're cool with that? Do you pick your battles very wisely, sometimes too wisely? Do you take people as they are and love them anyways? And are you more focused on encouraging them than criticizing them, especially criticizing them over small things? Okay, so I'm going to scroll down. Okay, so number 4 is, if you are an empath, you have a hard time setting your boundaries. Now, this is for a few different reasons. One of those reasons is that you have a hard time distinguishing between what are your thoughts, emotions, and feelings and what is somebody else's. And sometimes when you're around people that you really care about, you can kind of pick up on maybe their feelings of excitement, for example, and mistake it for your own, and only realize it a little bit later that you ended up agreeing to things and doing things that don't really align with you, that you don't even like doing anyways. And you may realize it like after you've already started doing the activity and kind of gotten involved in it. You might realize it after the activity is over, or you might realize it when you're separated from this person, when you're by yourself, when you can be back in your own energy, you're not pulling in from other people, and you're kind of more back to yourself. And then you kind of are like, why did I do that? I don't even like doing that. Like, it's not even my kind of thing. How did I even agree to that? So there'll be some of that going on, and that will probably happen a few times before you realize that it's not your energy that you're picking up on, it's theirs. And that's when you will set your boundaries. Like, you can set boundaries, it's just that at first it's confusing for you because you don't, when you're with somebody new or just dealing with other people, there's this mix of energies going on. You're picking up on theirs, you're picking up on yours, and you can't really make that distinction. But then whenever certain situations happen and you realize after, like, oh, I didn't really enjoy that, you realize it, and then you will make the confrontation that you need to make and say, like, hey, like, I'm sorry, I've been very confusing because I was confused, and I know that made you confused, but I actually don't really like this activity, and just wanted to let you know, and would rather not do that going forward. So empaths can set boundaries. It just takes us a little while to understand what those boundaries are for ourselves. Okay, so another reason why we tend to have a hard time with our boundaries is actually quality number 5, which is you also have a very loving desire to help other people, often at your own expense. And that tends to lead to number 3 that we already talked about, which is people often tell you that you are always there for them. So we tend to set our boundaries, and then what happens is we share our boundaries, But sometimes if we're with the wrong person, what happens is one of two things. That person really needs our help and they request it from us, and we decide to overstep our own boundary and break our own boundary, or that person really needs us and we feel it and they ask us to step over our boundary, and we deal with cognitive dissonance in that moment because we've set our boundaries, we've made it clear, but the person doesn't seem to get it or isn't listening to it, and we don't know how to deal with that situation. And we'll kind of allude to some of that later on in this video, that that is kind of an empathic quality of like not understanding how somebody could ask us to overstep our boundaries. And so then we do overstep our boundaries, and then that's another way that we tend to not be able to keep our boundaries. And really the advice there is so I'm actually not going to get into this with you guys too much in this video, because the advice I'm going to give you is the advice that you're not going to listen to. The advice there is that you probably should engage a little bit less with this person who is not respecting your boundaries, because this is not entirely your fault. Like, yes, you should hold to your boundaries, but they should also respect your boundaries and not ask you to overstep it, or not put you in a position where they're asking for help in a specific way and then you overstep it yourself. They should understand that you've set this boundary and that you have feelings too, and that they also need to be there for you. So it's not entirely your fault, but what you guys should probably do is not engage with them as much. I'm not saying cut them out, but not engage with them as much, not be there as much for them. But because you are empaths, you'll have a very hard time doing that because of number 5, where you really want to help them, and because of number 4, where you mesh your energies together, and also because of number 6, which we're going to talk about. So we're not going to talk about this in this video because you're not going to listen to me, and guess what? I get it. I'm the same way. But actually, in all seriousness, I will have a video on how to not overgive so much as an empath, and in that video we will talk a little bit more about how to balance your needs with their needs and how to help you think about it so that it doesn't feel like you're just abandoning them. It'll bring a lot more balance to this, and it'll make it a lot more easier. You'll understand it more logically and emotionally, and it will help you move forward on that. But anyways, number 6, which is also a reason why you overstep your boundaries, is you tend to forgive easily, because like in number 2, you take people as they are. You understand that people are growing, that mistakes get made, and you honestly cannot actually hate somebody even if you think that you can. So now I want you guys to ask yourself, do you often do things for other people that you don't actually want to do? Do you do these things because you want to be there for them? Do you sometimes do them because it sounded fun at the time, even though it's not something that you generally consider fun? And do you forgive others easily when they seek an apology from you? And that second part, seek an apology from you, is very important. Because I think as empaths, when we're in our own energy, we can understand when somebody has not done right by us. And it's clear to us, and that's also important. It's clear when somebody is not doing something right to us, because it's not always clear to us because of energies mixing. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit later. But when we're in our own energy, separated from the other person, we can understand that they didn't do right by us, because we're in our own energy, we get it. And in that moment, if this is a situation that has continued to repeat, we can get upset, obviously. Anybody would. And if we know somebody is going to apologize to us, that can sometimes bring up a lot of feelings of annoyance and anger, because it's like, I have already forgiven you so many times. Number 6, right? I've already forgiven you so many times, and this repeats. And you think, okay, this apology is coming. I'm going to care about them because I do, but I'm not going to let this happen again. I'm going to have to like create distance, like actual distance, not just a boundary, but like we're going to have to limit our interaction. And that's what you think going in, you could be revved up. And then the moment that you see them, you pick back up on their energy. It's like that anger never existed. And if their apology is sincere, you will be able to pick up if it's not, because you can pick up if someone's lying. If it's sincere, you will feel it. You will feel the need that they have. And you'll be like, okay, it's cool, it's fine, we're good. And it's like the anger never happened. So that's why I'm saying you guys may think you can hate somebody, but you actually can't. It's just not in your wiring. Again, this is the reason why I think we are the leaders of the future. We'll talk about that later, but it's just not in your wiring and it creates some challenges. But yeah, so do you forgive others easily when they seek an apology from you? It's like when they come to you with that apology, it's like all of that anger is gone and you're like, okay, I forgive you. So that's why that was key. Okay, so now, number 7. If you're an empath, sometimes you give because you fear negative consequences. So you might feel like if you don't give the person that you really care about what they want, or yeah, if you don't do what they want, that they may retaliate in some way, or they may take away their affection, or you may get punished in some way by them. And so I want you guys to think, do you sometimes worry about standing your ground because you think you will be punished in some way? And there are 2 things that I want to say about this. The first one is, I think that just the awareness of this will help you in the future because you probably don't even realize that this is happening. And if you think back to your relationships, you may realize that this has happened, and just that awareness will keep you from repeating this cycle again. You just haven't realized it. And second of all, I want you guys to remember that you are the person that is always there for others. People need you. They come to you because they need you. It is not the other way around most of the time. Yes, sometimes we need other people. We all need each other, but other people need you a lot more than you need them. That is why you always have them coming to you with their problems, always needing things from you, always wanting your attention. It's just part of the cycle. It is also an aspect of being a leader. People need you. So do not fear retaliation, because if that person walks away and stops giving you the affection that honestly you deserve, there are other people out there who would not do that, and you don't need that person anyways. Like, you're the one giving to them. They're walking away because you won't give them what they want, and they're only there for you because you give them what they want. Once you no longer cut that, they're gone. It's because they only want you for what you're giving, probably. If they're overstepping your boundaries, and that's the kind of person that they are. This is not everybody, of course. There are people who need you, who also try in every way to give to you, and those are amazing, special, beautiful people. You should definitely keep them. Okay, so number 8. If you're an empath, you can find the work environment in politics very jarring and foreign, because you cannot wrap your head around the dishonesty. And number 9 is you don't do well with hierarchy. So I personally was born psychic, and I've known that I've been psychic as early as I can remember, since I was 4. But I didn't know I was an empath until like my early 20s, until years after I'd been in the corporate world. So for me, it was a very, very, very jarring experience for me. I felt like I was surrounded by crazy, insane people all the time. I still do sometimes. And it's just dealing with the lies and the insecurities and just the fear-based energy of a toxic environment. This is not all corporate cultures, but a toxic corporate culture is based off of fear. And I didn't feel the fear. They tried to instill the fear. Well, they tried to instill it in me, and I was just like, oh, okay, because I think it's like number 3. I forgot what number it was. I don't really make a big deal out of things. I let people deal with their fears, and that's cool. That's your journey or whatever. But just how they would play off of, like, how they would, when you're insecure, you do things that are not nice to other people because you are insecure, and just watching all of that and being on the receiving end of a lot of that, because I am secure, and that tends to rub insecure people the wrong way. It was very, very hard for my very sensitive soul. And I actually didn't realize until years later, but I actually, I realized this. Okay, so I wrote a book actually about this whole situation, and I wrote it for the honest person. That's how I talk in my book. That's what I refer to as, like, if you're an honest person, this is how you deal with the situation at work. This is how you deal with this situation. And I didn't realize until years later that I was actually referring to the empathic person, not just the honest person, and how to deal with office politics and all those situations. So if you guys are interested in that book, I will leave a link to it below. If you guys are in a toxic corporate situation and you're trying to find ways to cope with it and handle situations, I talk about tons of office politics topics. It's actually 25 different topics, including like how to handle when people take credit for your work, dealing with people who play the blame game, just that whole thing. All the crazies in that world, okay? So link will be below. Let me see if I missed anything. Okay, so now it's time to ask yourself a few questions. First question is, how do you feel about hierarchy? And the second question is, how do you feel about how people interact in the corporate culture? Now, I want to say a few things about this. If you are in a positive corporate culture, you're really not going to be picking up on this. You're going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Culture is great. And I really think that society is moving to a much better corporate culture. I don't know if it's just because I'm in a much better one, but I feel like empaths have always been around since like the beginning of time. But I really feel like future generations are really embracing that empathic spirit. And as a result, corporations are also having to embrace that spirit because their talent is going to come from these future generations who are embracing the empathic side. And if corporations want to thrive and continue into the future, they're going to have to cater to the talent. Otherwise, there will be nobody wanting to work for them and they won't get their pick of the litter. And so I feel like corporations are trying to get on board with that. They're offering a lot more work from home opportunities, which I think is perfect for the empath because even though you pick up on energies like from people all around the world, you don't have to be in the same room as them. It helps create some of that barrier and you have this space when you're by yourself, when you're not talking to those people, to settle back into your own energy, to do a little meditation if you need to, and to just find that space within yourself. So, that's one way. And then what else? I feel like environments are getting more positive and they're allowing for a little bit more honesty in the workplace. There's still a long ways to go there, but good cultures are honest about you and your career direction and what you're looking for, and they do not get threatened if you want to move to a different role. If anything, they support you and they give you good referrals and they want you to find the right fit, and they would rather you find the right fit in their company so they can retain the talent than go off somewhere else and take everything you learn from them and go share it with a different company and give them all the skills over there. So that's a more forward-thinking company. And then also they're also becoming a lot more socially conscious, which is really important to just our generation as a whole, but also as empaths, just being aware that there are other players in the world and other factors, and we all interrelate, and it's important that we take care of everybody. Come on, guys. If you put your heads to it, we can help everybody. All right. You guys know this, so I don't know why I'm preaching to you guys. Okay. Oh yeah, so that's if you're in a really good corporate culture, then this whole concept of not being able to handle it is not really going to resonate with you. So I'm happy for you guys. You don't have to deal with that. You're in a progressive company. If you are somebody who is not an empath at all, this whole corporate conversation of hierarchy and insecurities and blaming other people, having to lie, and taking credit for other people's work, you won't feel like that's a bad thing. Like, you consciously recognize that you're probably in a toxic place, but to you just think, well, that's just what I have to do to get a paycheck. Like, it's just part of the game, the society, it's just what I have to do. You're probably not an empath because you can do that and you don't feel the energetic discord. You don't feel it in your core. It doesn't shake you up of what is going on with these people. Why are people treating people like this? So if this conversation is just like, what's the big deal? You're not an empath. Because an empath, if you're an empath, you cannot handle a situation like that. You can't. You just are not wired to thrive in that situation, to become that kind of person. It's not who you want to become. It's not who you can become. You are way too heart-centered for that. You probably will not last more than like 2 years at a company as a result. If you are in a very toxic culture like that, you just can't. And if you stay there any longer, you become more and more bitter. You kind of become a shell of who you used to be. It starts going out into the rest of your world. You can't brush it off. You talk about what's going on at work when you're not at work, and you just can't brush it off, because the thing is that empaths don't think this way, but this is actually what's going on, is the corporations or the cultures that are very toxic do not deserve the empath's energy. They do not deserve the empath's talent, because society is moving towards a more empathic future. Again, that's why I think empaths are the future. The leaders are our future. Society is moving that way. And if a corporation is not getting on board with that, if they are not doing the work to be an empathic corporation, to be more heart-centered, to be better to their people, to create better environments, to create good products for their customers and their clients, if they are not moving in that direction, they don't deserve the empath talent, and the empath talent is a talent of the future. Those corporations are going to get the last pickings. They're going to get, and then if they get good talent, the talent's going to leave. They're going to find another opportunity. They're just going to use the corporation for the name brand, and then they're going to hightail it out there and go find a corporation that actually is progressive and actually is of the future and that actually deserves the talents of an empath. So I think we're going on a tangent there, but you kind of, that, I feel like this situation, if you have ever been in a toxic culture, it will tell you very quickly if you're an empath or not. Because even if you're a sleeping empath, you can't handle the situation. You will try to fit in, but it won't work. You can't. You will try and you will fail, you'll feel awkward, it won't work. But if you're totally cool with it, if you try it and it works out and you're like, I could do this, it's just a job, it's just how I spend 8 hours of my day and it makes my paycheck and then I can get on with my life, then you're not an empath. So I feel like this is like probably one of the most telling signs of whether or not you are one. Okay. Number 10. If you are an empath, you pick up on lies and manipulation immediately. You just know it's there. You know it's there right here. And you just feel like something is off. You feel it in your gut, or you feel it in a vibe. There's like a weird vibe between you guys. Something feels off or something weird between you. There's some kind of restrictive, like friction type of energy between you. You feel it. You know it's there. But you still get in just as much trouble as if you did not know that the lies and manipulation were there, because you just cannot fathom, you cannot wrap your head around the fact that somebody can think like that somebody can have false intentions, that somebody could have an ulterior motives and other agendas. You are just not wired that way. You do not think that way. And so it is very strange whenever you realize that somebody else is thinking that way. You just can't understand it. And this kind of situation where people take advantage of you is going to happen several times throughout your life, and you're going to get better at handling it. But the one thing I don't think you will get better at is understanding that kind of thinking. I think you will always be perplexed by it. I am still perplexed by it. I will do a video on how to handle those situations and those people and ulterior motives and all that, but I can't do a video on how to understand them because it still confuses me. We are just wired differently. We just don't think that way. I almost forgot number 11, which is another reason for why, even though you pick up on someone lying and pick up on someone having ulterior motives, you still get yourself in as much trouble as if you had not picked up on that. Another reason for that is number 11, which is you tend to not trust your own instincts about that. And really that just comes with practice and understanding what energy is yours and what thoughts are yours and what energy and thoughts are not yours. And I go into that, how to do that, in my free course, and I'll talk about that free course at the very end of this video. But that was number 11. So number 12 is, if you're an empath, you are easily disturbed because you can't help putting yourself in other people's shoes. And that can be in real life. It can also be in terms of what you see on TV. It's just that we cannot handle injustice, we cannot handle cruelty, we can't handle oppression. All that stuff just makes you feel so sick inside. And like I was saying, it doesn't have to be out there in front of you. It can also be what you see on TV and the news, and it can also be what you see on TV in terms of shows, like what is fictional. Like for me, I can't handle Game of Thrones. I watched all the first season and it was just, some of the concepts were just so disturbing to me. And I'm not talking about the nudity, I'm not talking about the gore. It was the concepts that really got me, and I go into that a little bit in the free course. And then I also can't watch like The Handmaid's Tale, and I can't watch like Mad Men. It's just like the concept is just there, and it just, an empath cannot handle cruelty, injustice, oppression, anything like that. And that's also kind of ties into the corporate culture of when you see that, or when it's happening to you, when it's happening to other people, especially if you see that, just, it seriously like breaks your heart. So that all ties into that. Oh yeah, like the Hunger Games, I actually really like the Hunger Games, but in that, Like I liked all the movies, and then I read the first book, and there's like two scenes in that book that just, like, so it can also be in books. Okay, so number 13 is, if you're an empath, you find it really hard to lie to other people because you dislike dishonesty so much. And it's almost like you, as an empath, might prefer it if somebody lied to you versus you lying to them. Because when somebody's lying to you, it's almost like you understand, people have different value systems, or people are growing and they make mistakes, and then you forgive easily. It's like all those concepts we talked about earlier. But when you have to lie, it's just like it hits you at your core, and you're just like, who am I becoming that I am having to do this? And if you are forced to lie, unless it's like a life or death situation, or like a very, very important situation, or like a surprise, if it's something where you really do not believe you need to be lying, but somebody's putting you in the position of having to lie, like, you will do it, but you will lie in such an obvious way. Like, you'll make it so obvious that you're lying in hopes that the person that you're lying to will pick up on it and catch you. You want to get caught, because then that gives you the opportunity to spread out the truth that they weren't allowing you to share before. So that's like the mind game that sometimes empaths can get themselves in. And okay, so my theory on, or like why I think that this is happening, is because as empaths, we're wired that way. And I think we also realize that the future is becoming more empathic. Again, this is why I think that empaths are the new leaders of our future. It's kind of like what I'm trying to do here. But we are wired that way, and we also realize that the future is becoming that way, or it needs to become that way. And as empaths, we pick up on people's thoughts, we pick up on their feelings, and we can tell when they are lying. And as more and more of us become empathic, we can tell when people are lying. And eventually lying will become something that is just, what's the point? Like, obsolete, basically. It's like, what's the point in lying when we can all tell that you're lying? And so lies will become something that eventually will need to be taken out of our society, because it just won't have a use. Because with energy, you really can't lie. Because the truth of how you actually feel and what you actually think is in the energy, and the mask that you put around it, the energy's still there no matter what kind of layering you try to put on it. So we kind of understand that. We understand that's where things are going. We're wired that way. And so we're already on board with that ship. We can't do that. Again, I'll talk about why I think empaths are the future leader at the end of this video, a little bit more on that. Okay, number 14. If you're an empath, you may feel emotions that you cannot explain at times. So you might be feeling really happy one moment, and then all of a sudden you feel really sad, and you can't explain it in yourself. Like, you can't think of a thought that triggered that sad feeling. You can't think of a memory that you're remembering. You can't think of an object that maybe triggered a thought. You didn't watch something on TV that made you sad. You didn't hear a sad song. It's like, where did that come from? And what's happening is that you're actually picking up on the energy of somebody around you. Now, you can pick up on energy of anybody in the world, like I've already mentioned, but when you're having that quick shift, you're probably picking up on somebody around you, or you're picking up on somebody that you spend a lot of time with that might not be around you, but you're still in tune with their energy. So, like, I know for me, like, sometimes, here's one example. One time I went to go get my hair cut, and I was feeling happy, fine, great. And as I was walking up to the door, I was probably like 10 feet away. I wasn't even at the curb, too. There was like a long sidewalk, like a big sidewalk, and I still wasn't even there. I suddenly started to feel really angry, like super intense, really angry. I didn't know why, and I was just like, as an empath, you don't always know why immediately, but you will pick up on it. As soon as you realize the connection, you'll pick up on it then. So I didn't really know why, so I walked in, signed up, put my name down or whatever, and I sat down, and I just kept getting madder and madder and madder. I sat there for like a few minutes, probably like 5 minutes, and then this lady across the room gets this phone call, and the way she answered it was like they had been talking before on the phone, and they were continuing their conversation now, and she was just like cussing the person out. She was super pissed, and I was just like, oh. And usually the awareness will be enough to be like, okay, that's their energy, it's my energy, like, let's cool it down, it's all good. But I ended up leaving and I went somewhere else. So that's like a situation where you're feeling one way and then suddenly there's a shift and it's not you, you're picking up on something else. And I know, like, in my family, a lot of times I'll be feeling good or relaxed or happy, and then I'll like go down for dinner or something or like hang out with my family, and all of a sudden I feel like really stressed or I'll feel really irritated. And now I just have a habit of saying, like, so is somebody irritated or like annoyed or stressed or whatever I'm feeling? And like someone will always be like, that's me. I'm so annoyed for this reason. Like, I tried to work on this, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, oh, okay, okay. Yeah, so that's just a thing that happens to us. So if that is something that happens to you, pay attention to that. And again, I talk about how to be more aware of these things, like what's yours, what's not yours, in my free course. So that also goes into that as well. But start paying more attention to some of that. And again, like, this doesn't have to be somebody that is necessarily around you. Like, sometimes if I'm in a relationship with somebody, I can tell when they're having a really stressful day, even though we're like at opposite ends of the city. So it's it's just that I'm like very in tune with their energy, so I'm just picking up on it more. It has its benefits, you know. Has its stresses too, but okay, so number 15 is, if you're an empath, you have at some point in your life, even if you aren't not there now, you have at some point in your life been very interested in spirituality, the paranormal, metaphysics, all of that. You've explored that. Number 16 is, if you're an empath, you feel a very strong love connection to animals or to nature. And I think that this really comes from the fact that we need to be better to our planet and also to the other beings on our planet. And that's why, as an empath, you're already naturally wired to be that way. So you may really be into the environment and protecting it. I know for me, like, animals, I've always loved them. I've always had a place in my heart for them. I often love them a lot more than I love people. Sometimes I like people's pets more than I like them, and I miss their pets a lot more. And it's just because we need to be that kind of person. We need leaders like that can really be responsible like that. And for me, like, I always loved animals. My favorite projects in schools were the ones where you got to pick an animal and do a report on them. And then I became vegetarian when I was like 10. People don't even know what that is when they're 10. I became vegetarian when I was 10, and then I started leaning a lot more vegan, like when I was 22. So you may have some kind of connection like that, like nature, animals, environment, like something that really ties you to the earth, like Mother Earth and what she really needs. Okay, so number 17 is, if you are an empath, you may feel like you came to earth to fulfill a purpose. I believe that your purpose is to be one of the leaders of our society going forward, because I really think that there are a lot of things in our world that don't have to be the way that they are. Like, I don't think that greed needs to be there, the kind of corruption that's there. It doesn't have to be there. Maybe it served a purpose in the past, but we'll talk about this more. There is an upheaval going on that you guys can see, where it's really coming to the surface for us, and I'll talk about this more later, but things can really be done better. They don't have to be the way that they've always been. And as an empath, you know that. You see what's going on in the world, and you know that it's not being done in the best ways possible. And you have a mission for that. You have a feeling of purpose. And you probably align with a lot of those concepts, those terms that I mentioned earlier, like light worker and indigo and all of that. Because, yeah. And when I say leader, I don't just mean politics, but I do mean politics as well. I especially mean politics for empaths. But it doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be like CEOs, but I also mean that. It can mean artists. It can just mean anybody that is bringing about change and being influential in their own way. That's what I mean by that. You could be interested in anything. It's whatever your heart is called to, and then becoming a leader in that realm, basically. Okay. Number 18. So if you're an empath, people often offload their stories on you. They tell you everything, but they may not really know you that well. I know people will tell me some of their deepest, darkest secrets or share some of their thoughts that I'm just like, you should keep that to yourself. It's like a lot of times you get information that's TMI, and people don't know you that well. Like, they've known you very briefly. Maybe even the first conversation, they feel like they know you. They feel like you guys connect, and that's because of that energetic bond. And then they like offload all their problems on you. And then they walk away, and they often feel very healed. They feel a lot better because you're a natural healer. You don't always feel that way. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you feel very drained. Sometimes, especially if they're an energy vampire. I talk a little bit about that in my course. I don't go into too much detail, but I talk a little bit more about what an energy vampire is and what their intentions are or are not. But yeah, you don't always feel as good coming out of those situations because you are a healer, and if you don't know how to kind of shield your energy and kind of protect your energy, then you can be drained. But we go into how to do that, how to be protected, how to prevent draining, how to recharge your energy field, how to deal with energy vampires, etc. in my free course. So if you're interested in that, make sure you check that out and stay for the end because I'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so number 19 is if you're an empath, people you're close to and that you love feel you're always there. Oh, yeah, sorry. We already talked about that. Okay, so what I was trying to get with there is that if you're an empath, yes, you have the people who are very close to you who feel like you're always there for them. That makes sense. You spend a lot of time with them. There are many opportunities for you to be there for them, and you are a healer, you are a giver, and you like to help them, and you feel their energy. So of course, like, that situation would happen. But there are also people that you have not ever met yet who may come up to you and say that something about you just makes them feel calm, makes them feel like things are going to be okay, makes them feel happy when they were down moments earlier. They just, something about your energy, and they just want to connect with you for that reason. I know that happens to me a lot. That happens to me a lot, especially at work. I know one time I had just started somewhere, or I was working somewhere, and someone came up to me and they said, I don't know who you are, but I really want to meet you. Because for some reason, every time I walk by your desk, I could be having the worst day. I just feel so much better. Something about your space, you being in that space, makes me feel better, like everything's gonna be okay. And then I know somewhere else, like I met somebody, I was at like an interview at a bowling alley, and I met somebody for the first time, we shook hands, and they're like, we should grab lunch because for some reason you make me feel very, very calm and serene. Like, this happens to me a lot. So if you're an empath, this happens to you because we're natural healers and we give out very positive energy. We take on the negative sometimes, but we give out positive. And I talk about how to keep out the negative in the free course, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so that was the 19 different qualities that empaths tend to share. So by now you should have a much better idea of whether or not you fit into the empath umbrella. I really think that the corporate one really shows, even if you're a sleeping empath, if you are an empath or if you are not an empath. So I think definitely visit that section again and see how you resonate with toxic corporate cultures, or if you don't resonate with them at all. But for the most part, if you've watched this video all the way through and some of this resonated with you and it spoke to your heart and really aligns with how you approach your situations with people, like people that you really care about, like you're really always there for them, you really want to help them, you forgive them easily, you want to move on, you want to make things better, you forgive them, you can never really hate anybody, you know, just all these really nice qualities. You really care about animals or nature, you know, something to do with Mother Earth. You cannot stand injustice, and you can't stand cruelty, you can't stand oppression. Even if it's just a story, even if it's just fiction, you feel it like it's real. And you have a purpose. Like you know that we are heart-centered, and there's something that really calls to you. And you also know that you want to share love, like you want to be an expression of love. And that is what an empath is. And so probably that's what you feel your purpose is. I think that your purpose of love, and then aligning to what you love, what really energizes you, and then pulling that into the whole leader of the future together, I think really makes your purpose. But yeah, you should have a pretty good idea. I think if you watch this video all the way through, you probably are an empath. If you resonate with all of this, then you are an empath. If you have watched all the way through and you're a little lukewarm still, you might be a sleeping empath. You might not entirely be aware. You might not be as in control with your emotions. And so you aren't as loving as you would like to be. And maybe you don't act the way I've described all these ways. Maybe you cut people off instead of forgetting them because it hurts so much. So you may actually be a sleeping empath. And I would say that because you watched this all the way through. Like if you were not an empath at all, you would have been bored with this video and left a long time ago. Unless you already were one, you're like, oh, this is not new information for me. So that's why I say that I think you're probably a sleeping empath. And I think if you're an empath or a sleeping empath, you should definitely check out my course, which again, I will talk about later, don't worry, I will, which is a free course that goes into how to know what emotions and feelings are yours and what is somebody else, and how to protect yourself from negative energies. I don't always like to use the word protect. I do use that word just because it's easier. It's sometimes lack of a better word, but that's really not what the course is about. When you have to protect yourself, that means that you're not entirely empowered yourself and you need to shield yourself from the world. I don't believe that. I don't believe empaths are like that. I don't believe anybody's like that. I believe that we all are empowered. So really it's more like how to handle your situation so that you can be the fullness of who you are. But for easier saying, I say how to protect yourself from the negative energies around you, how to clear your energy field of the negative energies when they're really bogging you down, how to release that, and how to recharge your energetic field. And we go into all of that in my free course. But before we get into that, I want to talk about the future leaders, okay? So by now, I don't have to tell you this, but we are in a pivotal time when corruption is really, really coming to the surface all around the world. And it's basically slapping us in the face, and it's asking us to wake up to it. And through all of this shakeup of the corruption and all this shakeup that's happening, there are going to be voids left in our system. Where corruption used to be, there are going to be openings for a new kind of leader, the future leader, which I believe is the empath, because we need people in leadership positions who believe that you can be prosperous and you can be giving. We need people who believe that the way things have been no longer serves a purpose. Things don't have to be this way. We don't have to push people down just so we can get a leg up. We don't have to have greed and corruption. And a lot of people will probably tell you as an empath, as a sensitive person, especially in the corporate world, whenever you talk about the different issues that you're dealing with, that, you know what, that's just how the world works. That's just how the world goes around. Just get on board with it. Stop being so sensitive. And that's not true. That's not how things need to be. And I really feel like what's happening in our governments and in our society is really showing that a change is about to take place. The old is starting to break down, and the new really needs to step in and fill in those open spots and fill it in a very, very different way. Things can be so much better, and that starts with having a new leader, an empathic leader, leaders who can feel the pain and the joy of others and who really want things to be better. Because when you can really feel what others are going through, you can be that much better of a leader, because you can't be jaded. You can't deny what people are going through. It doesn't matter what walk of life you come from. If you're an empath, you can feel what anybody else from any other walk of life feels, and you can relate to them. And when you can really understand people like that, other people that aren't you, that haven't grown up the way you have grown up, that haven't grown up in your bubble, you can actually understand them, and then you can come up with solutions for them. And I think an empath really realizes that, like, in our society right now, it's always either or. Like, there are always limitations. It seems like limitations to how much money there is, and limitations to everything. And I think the empath, limitation to how much food there is, and that's why we have like hunger in the world. But I think an empath really understands that that's not true. Like, it's not that there is a limitation that's causing poverty or hunger. It's that we aren't being heart-centered, and we are not sharing, and we're not being generous, and we're not understanding that we can be prosperous and live happy, fulfilled lives of our dreams and still help other people, so that they're not living in these situations that they're living in. And I feel like I'm getting in my soapbox. But anyways, so that is why I created my free course, which is the Empath Survival course. And that is all about helping empaths, whether they are brand new empaths who are still asleep, or they are seasoned empaths who just want a refresher, helping them cope, like I was saying before, with all of the aspects of being an empath, the emotional sways, taking on other people's energies, the confusion that comes with that, and really becoming a very, very balanced person so that you can be that leader of the future, becoming whole so you can be that leader of the future. Because I don't know if I've already mentioned this in this video, but the thing is that oh no, I didn't mention it. I talked about how, like, I'm always surrounded by like crazy people at work. Like, I just see the crazy going on, and it's not just at work, it's in relationships, it's in family, it's just around the world. There are lots of really good people, okay? I love them. And I definitely have a good time when I go out and stuff, but I also see the crazy that's there. And the crazy is that people don't know how to handle their emotions. They are impulsive. They get angry quickly. They act before they understand. There's no understanding there. There's no patience there. There's no real love. People love you one moment, and then when you don't do something that they want, they no longer love you. They don't want to be with you. It's like, that's not real love. That's, I love you because you did what I wanted. It's not because I love you because of who you are. There's like just this impulsivity, lack of patience and understanding. And that is not just an empath. In fact, I feel like that's not really an empath trait. Like, empaths tend to be very understanding, very patient, unless they've shut down because it's been too much. But there are other people around here, and they are not any better at handling their emotions than an empath. An empath just goes through a lot of extremes and has a little bit more to deal with because they're not just taking on their energies, they're taking on the energies of others, animals, plants, spirits, just others. They have a lot more that they're dealing with. And it's important for them to have that, because that, once they retain their balance, once they learn how to balance that, they can be the leaders for others to learn how they can manage their emotions, because an empath has to deal with so much that they have so much more experience with that whole spectrum and realm that they can be that calm teacher for others who don't have as much experience and are just dealing with their situation but haven't learned how to. I hope that lands right and I'm making sense with that. So yeah, so I created this course is to really help empaths understand a little bit more about who they are, have this whole toolkit that they can use, that they can rely on throughout the rest of their empathic journey, throughout the rest of their life. Just tools that they can always go back to help them, to make sure that they're feeling good, that they're feeling balanced, so that they can be that very productive leader of society and help the rest of the world. So if you guys are interested in that course, it is a 5-day course, and I will include a link to the course in the description box below if you're interested in that. I will also be creating a video on how to not overgive in relationships for empaths, so if you're interested in that, be sure to check that out. And I'm also going to be creating some meditations. I'm thinking about one for the heart chakra to help balance that out, because that is the main chakra, main space that empaths work from, and it's really important that we are, feeling our best in that place so we can live out our purpose of love. And yeah, this concludes this video. I hope it was helpful. If you're interested in my course, I hope to see you there. If not, I will see you in my next video.